What's up guys, this is Taska Black, and in this video I'm going to be showing you all my secrets on how I make clean yet distorted vocal chops. I'm going to be using my most recent single Found Myself together with the amazing Taska as an example in this video, so let's dive right in. Alright, so this is what the full project file looks like. For Found Myself, we have the drums, the synths, the guitars, the strings, the vocals over here, and then down here we have the little vocal chop that we're going to try and recreate. So let me play for you so you have an idea of what it sounds like. Okay, so this is what the original vocal chop sounds like. This is without processing, so there's a whole lot of processing going on here. And this is what it sounds like without all the distortion and everything.
Lost and found myself tonight. Gave me up for no night. Lost and found myself tonight.
So basically what I'm trying to do here is just create a melody that I like. It doesn't have to be perfect yet. Also, I don't care about the words really. All I care about here is the melody. So the first thing I'm doing here is I'm using Waves Tune to correct the pitch and to make sure all the notes are in the right key. And it sounds like this, gives a little bit of auto-tune effect.
Lost and found myself tonight.
And then what I'm doing here is I'm using Manipulator to give it a little bit of stereo width, and I'm shifting down the formants by -8 semitones. I also messed around with the harmonics a little bit. You know, this is a great plugin if you want to mess around with vocal chops or, you know, just make extra layers for your lead vocal or something. This is a really cool plugin. And it sounds like this with a formant shifting. The next up, we have Driver by Native Instruments. This is basically the first layer of distortion. You can mess around with these settings. You basically have to mess around with the frequency and where you really want to hit that vocal, what frequency you want to distort, and the resonance also is something cool to mess around with. And then next up, I have a stock Ableton EQ, and this is really the secret to getting your vocal chops clean, or as clean as you can possibly get them. And what I'm trying to do here is I'm trying to get a melody that sounds like a synth or something, and it doesn't sound like just words chopped together. And how I do that is by filtering out all the frequencies that have the articulation of the words in it. So all these high frequencies that I'm filtering out are basically the articulation of the words that Tessa is singing. So if you filter that out and then you start distorting it to get those frequencies back, you'll basically get a melody instead of just words chopped together. So next up, I have Ableton Stock Overdrive. I honestly use this plugin a lot. It's pretty intense, so I do tend to control it with EQs before and after. And that's what I'm doing here. I'm filtering out a lot of frequencies and basically controlling it before I'm going into another Ableton Saturator. This is also doing a lot of distortion. So if you want to do this much of distortion, you really have to control it with EQs before and after to make sure it's clean and you're distorting the frequencies that you want to distort. So with all this EQ and this distortion, it sounds like this. So next up, I have this utility, and basically this is kind of a mixing thing. I have a lot of super wide elements in the song already. There's very wide stereo acoustic guitars, there's strings. So if I have a super wide vocal chop on top of that, it's just going to be buried underneath all those other sounds. So basically, if I wanted to pop through, I made it more mono, so it pops through the mix a little bit more. Then next up, we have kind of a weird series of effects in a weird order, starting with Valhalla Room. I use this a lot in vocal chops. It helps to mask the weird harshness and the artifacts of the other plugins a little bit, and it gives it some, you know, depth. And then next up, we have Echo Boy, my go-to delay plugin, just to give it some space. Sounds like this. is basically just to fill up the empty spaces in between the little vocal chops. And then I'm using the CLA two-way to kind of compress that all together. I mainly use vocals, or for vocal chops, I mainly use compressors that I would use on a vocal as well. So this is the CLA two-way. It's a pretty transparent optical compressor, something that you would use on just a vocal usually. And that's what I usually use for vocal chops as well, but you can basically mess around with any kind of compressor really. Next up, I have Valhalla Vintage Reverb, my go-to reverb plugin, pretty much. Yeah, just basic settings, mess around with this. Again, basically to give it some width and to fill up the space in between the little vocal chops. Then I'm going into even more compression with the RVox, again by Waves. Both of these compressors are doing moderate compression, nothing too crazy. And the reason why I chained it so weird, why I have like the echo going into a compressor, then the reverb going into another compressor, is because I wanted the echo to really fill up the spaces in between the chops. And that's why I squeezed everything together with this compressor, but I didn't want the reverb to hit that compressor as well. So that's why I have the reverb after that, and then the RVox is basically doing some moderate compression to compress it all together a tiny bit more. So it's basically just kind of a mixing thing and kind of messing around with the order just to get it right. Next up, we have the LFO tool, and this is basically to give it a little bit of a pumping effect, which sounds like this. And we're getting really close to the final sound now already. This is basically just some EQing, basically some mixing stuff, some filtering, nothing too crazy. And now this all is just one layer. I have an exact copy of this over here. So the only difference with this layer is this plugin called Decimort. I'm using the Bright Crusher preset. It's a bit crusher plugin, so it's going to add a lot of noise and weird artifacts of a tape sampler to the sound. And this is what that sounds like. So it does have a lot of noise, and that's why I'm filtering out most of the very, very high frequencies, and I'm just basically using those high frequencies to layer with the original layer, and this is what it sounds like together. So then I combined these two layers into this group, and this is basically some mixing stuff. So I'm just filtering out a little bit more of those high frequencies, which is basically the noise that was coming from this second layer, which was a little bit too much to my liking. Some compression, really not too much, only 10%. Some filtering, some EQing, and some side chaining. So really not too much going on in the bus. Really the secret here is all these, the series of distortion, the various kinds of saturation, overdrive, distortion, and obviously the EQing in between is super important if you want to get your vocal chops clean and if you want to get rid of the sound of that articulation of the word. So if you really want to have a solid melody that doesn't sound like words anymore, then this is key. You need to filter out those frequencies and distort it so it masks the sound of that vocal. So that's pretty much it. All right, I hope you guys liked the video. Make sure to check out my new release called Found Myself together with Tessa Dixon on Spotify or wherever you listen to music. And I hope to see you guys in the next video. Peace.